Over? Did you say over? Nothing is over until we decide it is.
Looks like we're experiencing technical difficulty. But don't worry, folks. We're still on the air.
That's right, we are. And it's Monday, so you know what that means. This week on That Nerd Show. We are back. I'm Marcus Blake, one of your hosts, and with me, as always, is Brendan.
Hello, everybody.
We got a lot to talk about in the world of video games today. It's our E3 Roundup, everything we learned and everything we're looking forward to. But we have a lot of other things to talk about. We got plenty of news from casting, from movies to TV, to a very funny this week Sign of the Apocalypse, something that is 20 years too late, but we'll talk about it anyway. So stick around for the next 2 hours. We got a lot to talk about. Alex Moore will be joining us for our E3 Roundup at 9, and then, of course, we have another addition to That Nerd Show's team, which will also be joining us, and whose name is also Alex. So you'll get the two Alexes with us a little bit later tonight. But before we get to anything, we want to start off by saying I hate doing this at the beginning of the show, but it seems like it's been happening a lot. Our first news item, Stephen Furst, the actor Stephen Furst passed away this weekend, and you will know him from, he was Flounder in Animal House. And for you nerds out there, he was on Babylon 5.
He was Veer Kato, your moon-faced assassin of joy.
I was going to let Brendan say the name because I never get it right. But yeah.
Veer Kato, but he was the deputy attaché to Ambassador Londo Mollari of the Great Centauri Republic.
I think, we remember him from Animal House more than anything else. It was one of his very first movies, just like Kevin Bacon, but his role was so fantastic in Babylon 5. Very underrated.
He has one of the greatest lines in the whole series, too. One of the villains in the series, Mr. Morden, asks him what he wants, and he goes, "I'd like to live just long enough to see them put your head on a stake as a warning to the next 10 generations that some favors come at too high of cost. I would look up into your dead, lifeless eyes and wave like this. Can you arrange that for me, Mr. Morden?"
If only we had leaders that talk that way and can get away with it. So, But yeah, absolutely right. One of the greatest lines from Babylon 5. So, rest in peace, Stephen Furst. You always made us laugh, and it's very sad to have you gone. So, getting to TV and movie news and a little bit of comic books. You will not get any gaming news until the second half of the show because, well, this entire show is about gaming for the most part. But we do have a lot that is going on, and we're going to start with, in case you didn't know, the next X-Men movie is called X-Men Dark Phoenix. Of course, they're dropping photos all over the internet from the set, but it will debut in next November if you hadn't gotten the date yet. So there you go, X-Men Dark Phoenix.
Maybe this time they won't screw up the Dark Phoenix storyline.
I know, right? So, and of course, you will have, sisters from Game of Thrones in the movie because Maisie Williams will also be playing a mutant alongside. And I just drew a blank on her name. Sophie Turner. Sorry.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's coming out, and we'll see. What happens with that. I think everybody can pretty much agree that Days of Future Past has been the best one with them going back in time, but the other ones haven't been absolutely horrible. So, unlike other comic book movies, Fantastic Four, we're still going to give you shit for that. So. Anyway. Also, for you Godzilla fans out there, yes, it has been, production began this week, but it also was confirmed that Rodan, Mothra, and Ghidorah will be in the film. So we'll have the trio of monsters along with Godzilla. So there'll be a lot happening. I don't know. I mean, do you feel like that may be too much for this, or is it okay to throw that into the second movie?
Honestly, I've never even been a Godzilla fan, so I don't know. It doesn't appeal to me. Like, I tried watching the old ones are fun to watch just because they're, ridiculous 50s Japanese sci-fi, so that's kind of hilarious in of its own right. But the new ones, it's one of those ones I'm just like, I don't care. I really don't. Whether it's too much. Hey, Spider-Man 3 proved to us all that it's always a bad idea to put too many villains in a movie. So yeah, it's probably not the smartest move. Speaking of, well, we'll get into it in this week's Sign of the Apocalypse, but name movies that have a ton of villains in them, and none of them turn out well. No. Having 5 bad villains does not make up for one really good one, and that's all you need is one really good one. Yeah, that's the yin and yang of a good, good movie. You just need one. Take a page from Star Wars. Everything is equal. So unless you just have big, massive Jedi fight. And even in even in the original X-Men movie, there were 5 or 6 bad X-Men, Toad and Sabretooth, but the only one that mattered was Magneto. He was the guy. Right. He was the driving force. So. Well, we'll see. The first movie they came out with was not bad at all. It was a good action flick, just like the latest Kong movie, and that's what it's supposed to be. So, but like I said, we'll see. All right, so we keep giving you news on Star Trek Discovery. We finally got a trailer a while back, which we've all talked about. So we finally got a release date. And yes, they would officially debut in a couple of months, September 24th of this year. Well, in a few months, but yes, September 24th. They will do the first. There will be kind of a split. There will be the first and second episodes will be available on streaming service and the CBS All Access. But what it's going to do is they're going to do 2 different chapters. They're going to release 8 the first half, and then the 7. In the second chapter, starting in January of 2018. So September 24th through November 5th is when you'll get the first part of it, and then you'll get starting in January, we'll get the second half of this season. So what you're telling me is that in late September, early October, there's going to be a run on the Pirate Bay servers in the United States, and then the same thing will happen again in January because outside of the United States, they get it on Netflix. But CBS is trying to exploit us Trek fans to prop up their shitty all-access streaming service, and I, for one, am going to tell them to pound sand. Well, I'll give you another example of how this is of a show that's kind of doing the same thing. Outcast, the Cinemax show. We did the first season last year. The second season still hasn't even come to Cinemax here in America, but the entire second season is being shown in other countries. So, of course, we already have everything because you can find it on streaming services in other countries. And I believe it already hit, like, Netflix or something, or one of the main things already that's not available in America. So, congratulations. You've done a good job. All we get to do is just review it early here in America and still not pay for your shitty service. Not that we're promoting pirates, but, at the same time, some of you corporate bastards need to be stopped and put in your place with how to do things. Just don't fuck over your fan base. That's that simple. Yeah, exactly. It's not hard. So, all right, here's a name that we've never really talked about on this show because he hasn't really been around in a while. But if you grew up in the 80s, you know who Tony Danza is. Who's the boss. He had one of the great little Disney baseball movies, Angels in the Outfield. And then, of course, he had that short-lived talk show that nobody watched. I don't even know what channel it was on. You know
but
more than
Tony
me about
Danza,
it. I didn't know it existed.
I know. But Tony Danza is going to be headlining a Netflix dramedy coming out, I guess, later this year, or next year. It's an hour-long dramedy from the creators of Monk. So that's basically going on. And I'll give you a little bit of a description of what it is. In case you're still, and yes, we're not lying to you. This is actual news. Tony Danza is headlining a show on Netflix. It's called The Good Cop, not to be confused, or no, never mind. I won't make that joke. It was called One Good Cop. I was about to compare it to the Michael Keaton movie in like 1990, but totally wrong. Yeah, but that was actually a really good movie, very underrated. In The Good Cop, Danza plays Tony Sr., a disgraced former NYPD officer who never followed the rules. He lives with his son, Tony Jr., an earnest, obsessively honest NYPD detective who makes a point of always following the rules. It's the odd couple, and, they become unofficial partners as Tony Sr. offers his overly cautious son blunt, streetwise advice on everything from handling suspects to handling women. So there you go. The odd couple, father and son, New York cops. That's the premise. And although I'm kind of being sarcastic with what this is, because it seems like we might have, seen this before, I'm actually intrigued because Tony Danza is old enough to kind of be able to do this and be that, guinea from New York that we... from like the 70s and 80s that might actually be kind of fun. Kind of reminds me, it's like they're describing the grandfather or the great-grandfather from Blue Bloods, who's from those old school rules, especially when he was the commissioner. So might actually be pretty funny, and I think Netflix is a good place to have it to see what happens. So, but there you go. I mean, the creators of Monk were brilliant anyway. That was a great show. Very underrated because it was on USA, but so... There you go.
Anybody watched USA?
Yeah, exactly. But congratulations, Tony Danza. You had noteworthy news that after 5 years, you finally made it into the news segment on that nerd show. So there you have it.
Wasn't he like a school teacher in Philadelphia like last week? I mean, like, how did he get back into acting? Like, did he just suddenly say, screw it, I'm tired of these kids?
Right. Well, I don't think people... Okay, so, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, who was also in Angels of the Outfield, directed his first movie called Don John about a New Jersey playboy. So it was basically Jersey Shore with Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Scarlett Johansson. It was a terrible movie. But, of course, because he's friends with Tony Danza from Angels in the Outfield, he got Tony Danza to play his New Jersey father, which was
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I do not recommend the movie. I thought the movie was absolutely terrible and just did not do anything for me because I hate New Jersey guys with a passion. But Tony Danza was actually pretty funny trying to eat dinner and being the typical Guinea, New Jersey guy watching football on the big screen TV, like literally propped up at the end of the kitchen table. Yeah, Brie Larson plays the sister who has no lines, but she's just always on the phone texting, but always has like the best looks throughout the movie. That was really what made the movie, good. But yeah, so that was the last movie I remember him actually being in because we had to watch the screener of that. I think that was one of those movies that I actually rated like a 4 or 5 because it was just that terrible. Anyway. Here's some exciting news. Bill Nye Saves the World Season 2 has been announced. So for everybody that loved the first one on Netflix, which you should if you listen to this show, we're not trying to influence you. We're just saying that, yes, you should if you're a proper nerd. Then, yes, there will be a Season 2. And the reason I love this... Yeah, go ahead.
I used to like Bill Nye, but he put out a tweet one time that I saw, and basically he said, if you can identify pop culture people but not science people, you should take a bath with a toaster. And I was like, you could try and educate them, dude, instead of being a condescending prick. And after that, I was just like, yeah, fuck you. You're dead to me. I was just like, yeah, that's it. I'm done.
All right,
I
just totally get that.
So for me, I'm like, whatever. If people want to watch them, great. That's their choice. I'm like, I'm done with them.
And I completely understand that. Sometimes I think these people need to get off Twitter and not get into these debates. It's not worth it. It doesn't do anybody any good. You're never convincing the other side that you're arguing with. Okay.
Yeah, and I mean, because we all know the number one way to convince somebody that your point is correct is to insult them and tell them to kill themselves. I mean, that works every time.
Exactly. Yeah. But I will say this about Bill Nye. I feel like he's a staple of educational pop culture, just like Sesame Street. And despite him getting into the political arena, because I know Bill Maher's had him on his show a few times, and I still love Bill Maher. And despite him, it's also like Richard Dawkins trying to be political with his beliefs and educate people, where you cross the line a little too far. It's not necessary. You know, educate the world. Don't get involved in stupid politics. I think that's a flaw. But that doesn't, in my mind, take away from how he does educate people on science and makes it fun. And I love the fact that Netflix has done this with him, or giving him a new show to introduce him to a whole new generation. You know, but yeah, stay off Twitter unless you're pointing out science facts. You want a Twitter account pointing out things like that? I will get my daily tweets from you about science facts. So I think that would be fantastic. But yes, Bill Nye Saves the World, Season 2, it will be coming. Anyway, here's another one that I found interesting. Now, we've never really talked about Tim Allen's show, Last Man Standing. It sits on the threshold of what we cover. But, you know, if you grew up in the 80s and the 90s, like we did, you watched Tool Time.
Improvement.
Or, I'm sorry. Home Improvement. Yeah. The Tool Time was the
fake show. Was the show within the show.
I apologize to nerds everywhere out there. I'm not giving you fake news. We wouldn't do that. But anyway, you did watch that show, and it was funny. It had a great run. I loved him having conversations with Wilson, and you never saw Wilson's face. But Last Man Standing, you know, has been his latest attempt of coming back, and you know, with ABC, and I think it was on for 6 years. But of course, there was some controversy this past year about it, you know, getting canceled by ABC, and it has to do with, you know, Tim Allen's politics because he's more conservative or too conservative for Hollywood. Well, the news that we're about to give you is they are in talks of reviving the show on CMT. So if you are a fan of that show, you might have a chance of going to CMT and being able to see this. The reason I bring this up is before we get into political comments or argue about whether they really did cancel it, you know, because of Tim Allen's politics, can we throw out another theory out there that maybe it just wasn't that funny? That maybe he couldn't recapture the magic he had with Home Improvement, and after 6 years, they just decided to part ways with it and do another comedy? I mean, it does happen.
It does, but I think really if you dig deeper, it's actually about money because they aren't producing the show in-house in ABC. There's another network that actually owns the right to the show. I don't know if it was Fox or NBC, but so it was a different studio that is owned by a different network that actually produced the show, and it cost ABC more money than an in-house show. So it's not that the show actually was doing bad, because the show, even after 6 years, was a fairly strong presence for ABC. I think it was like their third highest rated show, but it's the money behind it that they cut it because to them they were just like, well, we're getting cranked on Friday night anyway, so let's just cancel it and go with something cheaper.
Well, and I think that makes a lot more sense. I mean, before the conspiracy theories try to make hay out of this crap, Maybe that's what
Hey,
it
might be a nice.
And
it might be a nice bonus for the executives at ABC who don't like his politics. But in Hollywood and in TV, it always comes down to money. It's always money.
yeah. And you know what? That's it. If it didn't come down to the money that you could make off shows, we would have gotten rid of crappy TV a long time ago. Okay? Unfortunately, we live in a world where Dancing with the Stars and American Idol and crap like that makes more money than good, honest, well-written TV shows. But yes, I also thought it was kind of ironic that with this conspiracy theory that it's about his politics, of course it's CMT that would be in talks to pick up the show. So,
yeah, I mean they're placating to their base to boost their audience. It's a smart move for them.
Right. My biggest issue with Last Man Standing is while I do find it funny, and I do love Tim Allen in a lot of ways, it pushes the envelope of satire being too much. You know, and we had a very big discussion about that last year with that movie, Is That a Gun in Your Pocket, about the Texas town, or all the women in the Texas town holding out sex, trying to ban guns after a school shooting. Great concept, but the writers put their politics too much in the writing, and it missed the point, and it just wasn't as funny as it should have been. I think that show pushes the envelope. There are some great moments in it, and I hear things come out of Tim Allen's character's mouth that remind me of my father. But, again, pushing that envelope about your beliefs and about what you want and all of that, sometimes it can go too far. And I think that takes away from the comedy. You kind of knew where Tim Allen's character, you know, where he stood in his politics and his beliefs in Home Improvement. But it was subtle. They got it out there without actually having to say it. And it ended up being this good, you know, comedy, good drama that families could watch. So I think for me, that's my personal take on The Last Man Standing. But I root for Tim Allen. I want him to have a good show and to try to recapture that magic of a show that I loved when I was a kid, that I could watch with my parents. Sure. But this just wasn't it. Now, a little bit later, we're going to talk about The Ranch Season 3, and there's a reason we're going to talk about that. It's mostly because of Sam Elliott being great at comedy. Now, you want to talk about a man and his beliefs where the satire is not overbearing but absolutely perfect in its delivery. That's a great show you can watch on Netflix. And you don't watch it for Ashton Kutcher. You watch it for everybody else, especially Sam Elliott, because it's Sam Elliott. And he is hilarious. So, all right, moving right along. For you Psych fans out there, another great little USA show. If you didn't know this, they are getting a TV movie, kind of wrapping things up and bringing that back. And it was announced this week that Chuck star Zachary Levi will also be in the Psych TV movie. So you get kind of a nerdy actor that we've enjoyed in a nerdy show coming back and joining the cast of another very underrated U.S. TV show, basically doing a TV movie and helping to wrap things up. So there you go.
As long as I get to see Corbin Burnson being an asshole on TV, I'm fine with it.
Exactly.
For those who don't know, he played the main character's father, who is a retired cop.
Yep.
So.
Danny Elfman has been contracted out to do the score for the Justice League movie. So if you're wondering if it was going to be another Hans Zimmer, production, no. Danny Elfman will be doing it. And there you go. It was also, it's been announced that we're going to get a Bumblebee movie, kind of a spin-off from all the Transformers movies that are going to be shoved down our throat over the next decade.
Because we had to put one more bullet into that horse, huh?
Right, exactly.
Okay.
But the Bumblebee movie will be taking place in the 80s. And it will actually be the Volkswagen Beetle form. So we actually get classic Bumblebee movie. The only comment I have about this is I'm more anxious to see that than I am any other Transformer movie. Like, I'm not saying it's going to be good, but I would go and do that to have classic Bumblebee.
Look,
instead of him
gotta
being
have if it doesn't have a soundtrack that rivals Grosse Point Blank, it's a failure.
Right. Yeah. Actually, you could just take the entire score and soundtrack from the Transformers animated movie. I'd be happy with that. But you're right. You need a good... Yeah.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. If you have a scene in there where he's using the radio to help the guy get the girl, being in the 80s, I think you got to go a little Hall & Oates. Or Air Supply,
I don't know.
one of the two.
I'm kind of hoping they rickroll everybody.
That would be good too. So yeah, I mean, I think the Bumblebee movie is actually the next Transformers movie that we'll take serious in review. Because I mean, we're going to trash the one that's coming out. I'm sorry, but we already know it's going to be bad.
Optimus Prime destroys the world. Yeah, it's going to be pretty stupid.
We're happy that Peter Cullen is getting more work. So that's the bright side of that movie being made.
Yeah.
All right. So this is for the horror fans out there. So you horror fans that love Reanimator, which I do too, not saying that I don't, great. But there is going to be a new web and TV series that retells the story, and apparently it's going to be an Italian series. Here's a little bit about what's going on with this. We all know about the movie and stuff, but it was announced back in 2016, and it's now completed. It's the Herbert West Reanimator, and it's the brainchild of the Italian indie auteur Ivan Zuccon, who did the Wrath of the Crows. And the man himself connected with us today to fill us. He did a quick interview talking about it, and this is what he said. It's a modular project. They start with the web series, and then they will have a TV series at the end of the journey. We'll see a feature film. The web series is currently in post-production, and we're going to release it by the end of the summer. It's a very ambitious project. Of course, I know that Gordon and Yuzuna made great movies on the same subject, but I am crazy enough to find it in a different way, a more personal one, and tell the story with a different angle. First, we'll dig into some elements of the original Lovecraft tales, trying to keep the same atmosphere that you find reading the stories. And second, I am taking the distance from the Lovecraft tale at one point, drawing on Herbert West's with a different characterization. In the story, he is obsessed by death and the idea to overtake the concept of death at any cost, so the struggle is between him and his obsession. In the new movie, West is destroyed by a huge loss, and he wants to defeat death in order to have his beloved ones back. It's just a different perspective, but the same result. Lots of experiments with lots of failures, and lots of reanimated and very aggressive corpses. It's very dramatic about the kind of about any kind of comedy accent we have seen in the Yuzuna Gordon installments. But yes, it is an Italian production with an Italian cast and crew, and it stars Emmanuel Sermon as Dr. Herbert West, Valentina Bavona as young Eleanor West, and daughter of Herbert. We will probably not really recognize a lot of these actors because of the Italian cast, but a lot of them, but they're obviously quite famous in Italy. And this, I tell you what this actually kind of sounds like. I mean, to me, this is pretty much kind of what they did, except the web series with like Brotherhood of the Wolf. You did pretty much an entire, European French cast that were very. I don't think Monica Bellucci's ex-husband, who was in Brotherhood of the Wolf. I don't think the American audiences really knew about him up until that movie came out, and it became popular in America. But anyway, so there'll be another kind of reimagining of Reanimator, and we'll have more about that as it comes out, and definitely check it out and see if it's any good. But nothing can actually replace the classic 1985 film. All right, moving right along. Tom Holland, who plays Peter Parker / Spider-Man in the upcoming Spider-Man Homecoming films, he basically came out this week and said that there was a trilogy that is planned, and that that has been confirmed that there will be a Spider-Man 2 and 3. So, the only question is, I know. The only thing that I want to ask about this is, do we get these movies before there's another reboot, or are we basically going to stick with this for a while? I don't know.
I don't know. We'll see. Hopefully, I mean, I get tired of the reboots. What are we on, our third Spider-Man in 10 years?
Yeah, pretty much.
So.
But hey,
I mean, hell, we haven't had that many Batmans in 10 years.
Not for a lack of trying, I guess. So.
No.
And for you Walking Dead and graphic novel fans, it was announced today that in the new graphic novel, the new issue that is coming out, Negan will take the spotlight, and it will explore his origin story. So we're actually going to get his origin story within the graphic novels, which will probably eventually lead to an episode or two of what his origin story is in the show. So a little bit about who he is and how he came into power and all that. So there you go. And that is pretty much TV and movie news over the past week and things that have come out. So we want to get to an editorial segment first before we get to reviews. And this one does have to do with gaming. It was announced this past week that Atari is coming back and developing a new console system. And at first, when it was announced that they were coming back with something, I think most people just expected to have some new thing with all of their games on a hard drive, much like they did with the classic little Atari that you could buy for $40 with about 90 games. But no, apparently Atari is getting into the business yet again with a brand new console, and no time. I mean, it wasn't really announced when it was going to come out, if it was going to be next year or 2 years. But what is interesting about this is it's kind of surprising that Atari would be coming back, because a lot of what they have done is basically using new technology, with apps and software and whatever to kind of have all of their old games out over the last 25 years. So I asked this question before we start discussing E3 and everything that we learned. Do we really need a new console system? And if the answer is yes, is Atari really the company that should be bringing something back? Or are they really just a thing of the past and should remain that?
Well, I suppose that depends on the quality of what they put out. I mean, that's really going to decide everything. I think there's always room in the market for competition. I mean, if you look at it, there's, how many, the last console generation between Wii, if we exclude the Wii U, which was a dismal failure, but if you look at the PS3, Xbox 360, Wii generation, you had something like near 300 million units sold. There's 300 million people in this country, so that's pretty fantastic. So yeah, I think there's room for another console. It just really depends on, how much quality they can deliver, and can they deliver it for a good value? Because now you got with the PS4 and the Xbox One both at $250. That's pretty substantial value they have to overcome.
Well, and that's I think the biggest thing with them is, do you hit it right when the newer systems are hitting the market and try to undercut that and to try to be of the same quality? Because, I mean, Xbox One and PlayStation 4, it has been long enough now that, excuse me, we are getting ready for that new generation. Xbox S or, X or whatever the hell it's called just got announced, and they're
but that's but really those two, I think both of them screwed the pooch and came out with their systems too early, because the PS4 Pro and the Xbox One X are basically, they are not new consoles. They are just souped up version of the original console. And, I mean, the last console generation was 7 years long. This one has been barely 3, and they're both pumping out new systems. So, I don't know. I think what it is they came out a couple of years too early because of VR, they both had to react and come out with new systems. But I don't really think it's a new generation.
I don't know. I can consider it a new generation because of the VR. I think if you look at it from that standpoint, it can be. But as far as dealing with the brand new, the cross between games, because it's not like Xbox One and PlayStation 4 games aren't going to be able to play on these newer systems that are faster. They're still going to be compatible. But you also have games that are being developed for VR, and that's the thing. I think the other question to ask really is how it's going to deal with, Nintendo Switch, because this is kind of the last hurrah for Nintendo. If they fail at this, I don't see them doing anything else. I think Nintendo is officially done. But, what games are going to be available and developed? I mean, what is your control going to look like? How is it going to compare, to everything? We pretty much have settled on the fact that it's either Xbox or PlayStation, and that you have certain games that are specifically for one system and all that. And is Atari going to get into actually developing a game that's strictly for Atari? So, but I think the biggest thing that is going to be the money. Are you going to be able to deal with, competing with $250 to $300? Because anything that really pushes the envelope of $300, I mean, you're always going to get that $400 system right off the bat when it first comes out. But I also feel like you don't have to really rush out and do it unless you want to, because it still takes a while to kind of catch up to all the games being available. And, I mean, you know how long I waited before I finally got the PS4, and it was really when we started beefing up our coverage of video games.
Right.
And the same thing with, like, the Xbox One. It just, I don't know. I'm skeptical. I think it'd be kind of cool to have Atari, back in the game. But I also feel like after 25 years, what are you really going to do, and how are you going to wow the market?
Yeah.
So, I guess we'll see. We will definitely see. Is it going to be different? Is it going to be the same? I mean, like I said. All right, we're going to get to a couple of reviews. There wasn't that much that happened this past week, but some stuff came out, and we do want to definitely talk about them. The first is a movie that we saw this past week, 47 Meters Down, another little horror shark movie. And this one, instead of being terrorized by sharks and, escape trying to be eaten by them, this one added a little different twist to it. And I was really referring to the Shallows movie with, and I can't think of her name now, Ryan Reynolds' wife.
Yeah, I can't remember. Bree something, I think, or...
Yeah.
No, that's not right.
But it was that movie where, she was surfing, got stuck on a rock, and had to figure out how to get back to shore and escape all the sharks and everything. And, yeah, it was just not really that exciting. But
Blake
47
Lively.
Meters... Yes, thank you, Blake Lively. 47 Meters Down basically has Mandy Moore in it and Matthew Modine. And it's about two girls on vacation who, in Mexico... Mandy Moore is dealing with a breakup, and they decide to have a little bit of an adventure, and you could go out in the middle of the ocean and get into a cage and go about 5 meters down and let sharks swim around you in the cage. Well, this one takes a turn for the worst. The cable breaks, and the cage goes sailing down 47 meters down to the bottom of the ocean at that point. So they're basically stuck with depleting oxygen, being out of radio range, and sharks swimming all about, and trying to figure out how to survive. And Mandy Moore's character doesn't really know how to snorkel. I'm not saying it's an absolute great movie. It really isn't. I mean, and we do pretty much hold any kind of shark movies. The standard's always going to be Jaws. So that's how we're going to compare it, especially with character development and what truly makes you afraid. But I do think this is a fun film. And I personally ended up giving it like a 7 out of 10, and I believe Chloe James, that's what she gave it, who did our review. The unique thing about it, the unique thing about this movie really does, it's what she pointed out. You're dealing with this different kind of fear because it's the darkness and the isolation, and not knowing what to do and not being in contact with people. Okay, that's where your fear is coming from and how to overcome that. And of course, not going up too fast or you get the bends or, mixing oxygen to where you're going to start hallucinating. So you have all these different elements, that are coming into play dealing with sharks. And some things are kind of obvious, but then again, it's a fun movie in the theaters. I'm not saying it's a fun movie to really watch like at home, but if you're in a crowded theater watching this movie for, like a matinee or something, I think you will actually have a lot of fun. And it's only 90 minutes, so it doesn't get drawn out. The pacing is actually fairly good, for what it is. Now, Mandy Moore is very annoying in it, but she usually is in most movies.
Well, when you built your whole career on two white people almost kissing movies,
Yeah. I mean, I hate to say it, but you really shouldn't go into the movie hoping the shark eats her. We're rooting for the shark at this one. But anyway, just that scary, shark jumping out of the dark while they're swimming around. That's what was kind of fun about the movie. But I definitely wouldn't have paid $15 for a full-price movie ticket. This is like a $6 or $7 matinee or rented at Redbox type of movie. And again, it's certainly not Jaws. But it's a lot of fun for what it is, and the fact that they didn't try to stretch it out makes it a movie worth seeing on those levels. So it very worthy of a 7. And if you're looking for a matinee or just want to be scared or whatever, then I do encourage people to go see it. I actually liked it better than I did The Shallows, which I did eventually see for free on cable, and that one was really just annoying. Which was kind of funny because I was watching it on Starz, and then 2 channels later they were actually doing a Jaws marathon, so I just stayed on that channel. Yeah. But anyway.
Yeah, it's definitely the way to go.
Yeah. Okay, the other thing that we wanted to review that we didn't talk about last week is this is a new show that, the new season dropped this week. As I mentioned earlier, The Ranch is not really something that it floats. It sits on the threshold a little bit of what we would talk about and what we don't talk about on that nerd show. But I wanted to review it, and I wanted to bring it up because I actually finished it today. Each episode is 30 minutes, and they've been cranking everything out pretty fast. If you don't know what The Ranch is, it's pretty much what if you took that 70s show and made them all rednecks and cowboys in Montana. That's what it is.
Yeah, and instead of Red, you have Sam Elliott.
Exactly. Ashton Kutcher is supposed to be the lead in this show, and I think he, helps produce it or whatever. He's actually the worst part of this show. It is literally everybody else that is funny. So, you've got Sam Elliott. I got to get on IMDb because I cannot remember her name. Officer and a Gentleman, the lead actress, and Urban Cowboy. Anyway,
God,
she's in it.
I've seen that shit.
Yeah. Deborah Winger. That's who I'm in. Yeah.
There you go.
She basically plays the quasi-ex-wife getting a divorce. And, of course, you have Wilmer, who played Fez from that 70s show, who pops in and out. And then, this past season, Alicia Cuthbert is in there, and her mother is played by Donna Jo Rapp, from that 70s show. You have a lot of recognizable faces, and it's very funny in a lot of ways. But again, it's everybody else that's funny except Ashton Kutcher. Ashton Kutcher basically plays Michael Kelso with a redneck accent. That's it.
So he's Ashton Kutcher playing Ashton Kutcher as a redneck.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, I kind of fast forward through some of his scenes to get everything else.
Careful not to slip on my sarcasm. It was dripping there.
But the reason this show is worth watching and worth us reviewing is because of Sam Elliott. He is the cranky, truly conservative, doesn't like change, doesn't like cell phones, and the fact that they curse, they actually, drop the F-bomb all the time. It is the chemistry among everybody and with him. That's what makes the show very, very funny, and of course the interesting cast of characters that hang around, the little bar that they all go to, which is owned by Deborah Winger's character, who is the mom. So, and Alicia Cuthbert still looks great, after all these years. I just finished season 3, and of course you're dealing with, knocking up a girl, trying to get back with your ex-girlfriend, and Sam Elliott, too stubborn to make up with his son about renting a ranch and all that. I mean, I'm not saying this season was really as good as the first 2, but if you're looking for a great little show just to watch, quick 30-minute episodes and stuff, it is worth watching just for, like I said, Sam Elliott and Deborah Winger and everybody else except Ashton Kutcher. And Donnie Matheson, who played Hyde on that 70s show, he, in a lot of ways, really does steal this series, So, but it's Sam Elliott. I don't care if it's horrible. I'm willing to watch anything with Sam Elliott, aren't you?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, even if the rest of the movies, hell, We Were Soldiers, while it was a good movie, it was depressing as all hell, except for Sam Elliott.
Oh, God.
Morning, Sergeant Major. How the hell do you know what type of a morning is? Beautiful day, Sergeant Major. What are you, a goddamn weatherman now?
Yeah. I'm telling you. And if you've been in the Army, for my Army buddies out there, we're talking, which I'm very glad I get to say that now. It's been years that we've had more Army people come be involved with Warrior Point and all that, so I don't have to listen to all the Navy stories anymore. But anyway, for the Army folks out there, he is pretty much spot on in that movie of what a sergeant major is.
Yeah.
In fact, every sergeant I knew in the Army loved his role. That and Jack Nicholson in A Few Good Men. And also, we wanted to talk about. We did a quick little review on the movie Roundtable a while back, but I did want to mention again too. If you're looking for another Sam Elliott movie, we saw it at the Dallas Film Festival. It was one of our absolute favorites this past year by director Brett Kelly, who we've had the pleasure of interviewing a few times. But The Hero, which is about an aging Western icon played by Sam Elliott. And when I interviewed Brett, he said, I wrote the movie as a love letter to Sam because he's a friend and I've loved everything he's done. So it's basically him in the twilight, and of course Catherine Peterson or Robinson, his real life wife is in there, and that's a movie that if there's a screening of it somewhere in your town, you should definitely go check it out. It is worth the price of a movie ticket. It's very cathartic, kind of sad in moments, but you'll laugh. And if you truly, truly love Sam Elliott and everything that he does, you have to go see this movie. That one I did absolutely give. It wasn't perfect, but I gave it like a 9 personally, in our rating system because of Sam Elliott. So that's pretty much reviews for what's coming out this week. We'll have more for you next week as we finally get a chance to see War of the Planet of the Apes, which is coming out in July, and of course Baby Driver is our next kind of big movie that's also coming out in the next couple of weeks before we get to more summer blockbusters in July. So moving right along, we did want to get to this week's Sign of the Apocalypse. And this week's Sign of the Apocalypse is simply, after 20 years, Joel Schumacher finally apologized for Batman versus Robin. And he finally admitted that it was horrible, that they didn't do a good job, and he understands why fans hated it. So, thank you, Joel Schumacher, for finally recognizing that 20 years too late.
Finally admitting what all of us already knew.
Right. Thanks. Yeah. But your apology really doesn't, replace my bad childhood memories or, younger adult memories here. It was a horrible movie.
It'll never make up for bat nipples.
Right. And by the way, in that apology, we actually have an explanation on why they decided to do bat nipples. We didn't really need the explanation, but we have one, and I thought this was funny. His reasoning was the sculptor who did the outfits. He was different for Batman Forever and Batman and Robin. They didn't have the same guy who did the outfits, with the Tim Burton movies. Plus, the technology had changed, and they were able to do things a little bit better and stuff. So he admitted that it was his idea to make it look a little bit more anatomically correct. So put nipples on the batsuit. Because, when you're the Dark Knight fighting crime at night, to be anatomically correct with your outfit, that's what's important. Because that's what makes the villain fear you.
Because that's what instills fear in criminals everywhere. Nipples on your suit.
Maybe if they were, the fembots from Austin Powers, Machine Gun Jubilee.
I'm sitting here going, what are they doing? They're wearing black leather with nipples on them. Are they going to go for an after dinner drink at the Blue Oyster Bar?
Do 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 do.
So what was there? Was there partying? Was there drinking? There was dancing, sir.
Anytime we can make Police Academy references on this show.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought that was a great this week's Sign of the Apocalypse that he finally apologized. And I don't hate Joel Schumacher as a director. He's done great movies. He was the director of Lost Boys. Okay, it's just you were absolutely the wrong person to do Batman. Yeah. And part of it was the 90s where we thought everything should be neon and look like a 90s arcade game. I think, the problem is, remember the movie The Lawnmower Man and the early days of virtual reality? I think everybody thought that's the way it should be. Anyway. But there we go. Yeah. All right, before we get to the second half of the show, I want to turn it over to Brendan here for just a moment. And you were at a beer festival for Better Ales and Lagers this weekend.
I went to the Best Little Brew Fest in Texas, which is for Cloud9 charity, so all the money goes to charity, which is great. And they called it the Best Little Brew Fest, but man, they've shut down 3 city blocks of Louisville, and there were over 80 breweries there. It was a great time. Got to talk with a lot of really cool industry people. They had live music. The heat was a touch much, but at least they had a VIP room set up inside a building for us to go and get water and cool down a little bit. Also hit Cobra Brewing, which is right around the corner from there. It's a great little local brewery. So we went to Cobra first before it started. I had a couple of their beers. I had one of their wonderful beers they have is the Dawn of the Dank. It's a triple IPA. It comes in at 11.7% alcohol, so it's pretty boozy. But they had 2 special ones on. They had Dawn of the Dank with passion fruit and Dawn of the Dank with watermelon. They actually had another one on with tangerine, but I don't like tangerine, so I didn't bother. The watermelon was pretty good. I'm sorry, I didn't interrupt. I was just going to say I'm going to let you talk a little bit more about beer and review some of the things that people should be checking out, and I will be right back. Okay. So the Dawn of the Dank with watermelon was good, but the watermelon was a little mild. The passion fruit one was just outstanding. The passion fruit flavor really masked the booziness of the triple IPA, made it extremely drinkable. which is kind of dangerous with a triple IPA. Then I had a little fun. We were all joking around about how Bud Light tastes like. Oh, I'm going to save that story for when Marcus is back if he wants to hear that. Anyway, also tried their bourbon barrel aged All Eyes on Me, which is their Russian Imperial Stout with coconut. That was really nice. The barrel aging hit you really big up front, but then kind of mellowed across the back of your tongue, finished with coconut. It was really nicely done. Got to try some interesting stuff from Distill, which is a brewery up in Michigan. Did the St. Cara Reserve Sour. It's the Voulet Blonde. That was a really nice one. Also did the Mango Wit from Adelbert's, and a few others. I mean, I visited 10, 15 different booths.
Mango Wit.
20. Yeah, that was a really good one. But now here's one that I did. I had a little fun though while I was at. We were all joking about how Bud Light and Miller Lite are all these. They taste like water. So I actually took on Untapped. I checked in a Bud Light, and I didn't actually drink a Bud Light, but I checked in a Bud Light, and I put a picture of the beer with it, and I put a picture of a Ozarka water bottle with it. So.
Nice.
So I've had a few people send me messages on that. You know, one English guy I know on there is like, "You cheeky bastard." But anyway, there were just some great beers. I had a Blueberry Goza that was very, very well done. That was also from Distill. Had some nice beers from Oasis Brewing down in Austin. Really good session IPA from them. Trying to think of all the ones we said. Next time I gotta actually just bring a notebook and take notes because there's just so much there. Had some good stuff from Petacolis, who I've reviewed before, and we'll be going to see them at Petacolis. But yeah, it was a really great time. They put on a phenomenal show, and once again, it was all for charity. So hey, drinking great beer and I'm doing a good deed by giving money to charity, I'm all for it.
Well, that's very cool. Yeah, it's I mean, stuff is just popping up all over the place. It's kind of one of, if you've listened to our show, and obviously if you've watched Better Ales and Lagers, it's a very interesting dynamic that we throw in beer reviews and talk about this along with other nerdy things, because we are nerds for beer. And a lot of the friends and other fellow fans that we meet at conventions, have done the same thing. I mean, I love meeting the guys that are part of a Star Trek club or a ship, and there's always a designated brewer for that ship or that club. So they get together and do collaborations. But at the same time, so many little breweries, so many different things just popping up all over the place that, like I treat it like streaming content, that it gets hard to cover and know what's out there, because sometimes the market can be saturated. But go ahead.
One thing I really want to talk about, though, is if you use a beer rating system, whether it's Untapped or Beer Advocate or Rate Beer, I would really implore you to drop Rate Beer, because Rate Beer was just bought by a company which is essentially a shell corporation for Anheuser-Busch, AB InBev. So now which basically violates all laws of journalistic ethics. So the people who the media outlet that reviews beer is now owned by a beer company, and some fans have already found a glitch in the system which has artificially bumped up AB InBev owned beers. So it took all of it, it took all of a week for it to become a propaganda tool. And this is on top of AB InBev snatching up craft breweries, lobbying state governments to make it difficult on small independent breweries, and then going so far as to buying the major suppliers of homebrew supplies and the ingredients to beer themselves. They just snatched up all of the hop growing fields in South Africa. So it's like, really, guys, you're just going to force everybody out, and it's a mess. And AB InBev last year actually merged with SAB Miller. So even though Miller Coors here in the United States was not allowed to become part of the purchase because it would have violated American antitrust laws. So Miller Coors that you have now in the United States is made by Molson out of Canada, but all the Miller Coors outside of the United States is actually owned by Budweiser.
Wow. Well,
so yeah.
Before we get
they
to
they are the big scary evil corporation. They just happen to make beer.
This is what I'm going to say. You're never going to get people to completely stop brewing beer. The craft brewers out there, because everybody starts off basically as a home brewer before they go off and do that. It's like being in the minors before you make the show, or go to the majors.
Right.
You're never going to be able to stop the flood of being able to make good, great beer. You can saturate the market. You can have no ethics and try to get around all the laws and try to overtake. You can buy the small breweries, change the recipes. But beer drinkers, the people that have a passion for this, you're never going to win them over unless you have a good product. And if you keep trying to saturate the market, I'm going to call it like this. You're going to get people like us who get together and brew, who invent new things, who, if that's what we have to do to get the kind of good beer that we want, it's not about the money. It's about being able to drink something good and not have a market saturated with your bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
And I, of course, invite other brewers and people who have a passion for it to be involved in that as well. Hell, the local pub may just be a brew club where we bring our own stuff and say the hell with it. We're not going to deal with you and your crappy beer to begin with. So,
there you go.
And with that said, we don't sell it, but I will not drink your Anheuser bullshit while I'm on this show. I will drink my brown ale that I made about a month ago that's now ready to drink that's a lot better because it was homemade. And it's also better because I know how to make better beer than you do, assholes. Anyway, Brendan and I can get on our high horse about beer all the time, but we do have to move on to other things. We got video games to talk about. So I'm going to bring Alex Moore up, and we're going to get to talking about E3. So, Alex, glad you could join us and talking about some video games.
Mellow greetings.
All right. Our other new person may be on a little bit later, hopefully. But if not, the three of us can hold the fort down. Very big week with E3. If you've checked out our site, you know there was a lot of news coming out. We had a lot of trailers that we posted on our website as well. So we're going to go ahead and get this out of the way, even though we've kind of talked about it before. But I want to start with Battlefront 2 for the simple fact of hold on one second. All right. Okay. Is this the other Alex?
Yes. Hey, how's it going?
Okay. All right. Everybody, this is Alex Thomas, and we have Alex Moore. We have the two Alexes. Alex Thomas is is joining that Nerd Show's team, and he's also a gamer, so he's joining us for this podcast tonight. So before I get back to everything, I wanted to introduce him. But like I said, as we talk about E3, I wanted to start with Battlefront 2 because you don't really have two major trailers dropped for the same game. You have a trailer that advertises it, and then you have a little bit more of one of like a story mode trailer, which is what they've done with Shadows of War. But they've kind of done something unique with showing what the single-player campaign, the story mode is going to be, and then doing more with what the multiplayer stuff is and with all the legacy characters. And the reason I think this is actually fascinating is I think this is EA and Star Wars and everybody getting together and saying, we know we disappointed you with Battlefront. We want you to know that we've taken the time to really develop a good Star Wars game that's worth $60. And here's some things, this is what we want you to see from it. Now, from what I understand, the gameplay is pretty good. It looks like it's going to be everything that we want it to be. But, of course, you're still going to be dealing with, having to buy extended content a little bit and having to pay a little bit more, especially if you want to see the new outfits from, Episode 8. But I wanted to ask everybody around what your initial impressions are of Battlefront 2 right now. And I'll start with Brendan.
Yeah, it's everything they should have done for Episode 1, or for Battlefront 1, but I can't get excited about it. I'm not, first of all, outside of Destiny, I've never really been a first-person shooter fan. So it's not my Star Wars game, and really the real reason why I'm so disenfranchised with it is because EA has had the exclusive license for Star Wars video games for 4 years now. We've gotten Battlefront and Battlefront 2. We got no information about Amy Hennig's game from Visceral, which is really the only one I care about. And since it's been confirmed that BioWare's new IP was Anthem, which does look cool, and not a Star Wars or a Knights of the Old Republic reboot, that's really the only Star Wars property I care about right now. So can we get something other than Battlefront? It's been 4 damn years, EA. Get off your ass.
Alex Thomas, what do you think?
I think it looks great. The thing about the first Battlefront was that even though it was very linear, there wasn't a lot to do initially. It looked amazing, and anytime I'd play it, I really felt that Star Wars nostalgia, and you really get that experience, at least in the world that it created. They did a really good job with the detail there. So I think that they're going to do the same exact thing with the second one, and but they just increased all the things that the fans really wanted and kind of brought it to a new level. So I think that I'm pretty optimistic about it. I think they have the ability to make a great game, and from what I've seen, it looks really good. So I'm pretty confident in it.
I'm just really excited about a good single player campaign. Something that we should have had from the beginning. I mean, just it's great to have your lightsaber duels with Vader and Luke in different places and the survival modes and stuff like that. But you need that good driving, that single player campaign that you can get engrossed with, within the Star Wars universe. So, Alex Moore, do you have any thoughts?
Well, at this stage, I'm not really a huge fan of EA games just overall. It's something I sort of let go of several years back. I just stopped getting excited about a lot of the games that they make. And it's not that they don't make good games, but I think they just don't really tend to really branch out a whole lot. The games genuinely look good, as does this one. But I have to say, at this point, it's sort of like, the effects of diminishing return. At this point, you're seeing so many good-looking games that, what are you really going to do to really blow us away besides how it looks? Because that's kind of what all the games do these days. And so if that's what all the games are doing, then there needs to be something else to it besides just how it looks. And maybe that's just going back to being sort of an old-school gamer where, yes, graphics are nice and the other technical qualities, but let's see what else, what you got inside the pie, not just how it looks on the crust.
Nice. Hey, I'll admit, when I got Battlefront and started trying to fly like an X-Wing and have those aerial battles, I got pissed and I was like, I'm done. I went and downloaded an emulator for X-Wing versus TIE Fighter for my PC. I was like, I'm going back to the basics here, which are still fun 20 years later. So, I think really, again, it's the biggest thing with this is you've got to have the content there with this game for the price that you're going to be doing it. And if you fail on this, and I'll just go ahead and say it, get out of the business. Don't do it. Let somebody else take the reins on this. Because, especially with like RPG games, like Horizon this year, there's a lot going on. And, the amount of hours you put into a game like that, or Elder Scrolls, that's worth $60. That's $60 worth of your time, to get all the way to the end. So I want something like that with Star Wars on top of, being able to do little skirmishes or battles or multiplayer and things of that nature. And we kind of talk about this, which I'll segue into the first sports game I wanted to talk about. But, we talk about sports games being worth, the money. What do you really get out of it if you, play a season? MLB is always worth it because you get to play 162 games in the season and you get your little mini modes and stuff like that. But is Madden really worth that amount of money? Because you're only playing 16 games in a season, and you probably play the season 2 or 3 times. At least with basketball and hockey, there's 82 games and many playoff modes and stuff like that. But FIFA is always going to be worth the money because you can play any team in any league throughout the world. And that's always been, kind of the staple. And for someone like me, I will probably play 10 or 12 different tournaments throughout the year in different leagues. Okay? And some of them I'll go back through twice. But like this year with FIFA, for the FIFA fans out there, I have to ask this. Is there really any major improvements over last year's version? What is it? The big draw that they're continuing the story of Alex Winter, the made-up soccer player that, whatever. And Alex Thomas, you play FIFA, right? You play it, right?
No, I actually play 2K, but I have a lot of friends that play FIFA, so I know it's a huge game, and yeah.
Well, unless you make like vast improvements from year to year, it's just kind of like you're just basically playing a new season. That's really all it is. And I kind of, and again, it's what Alex Moore was talking about in terms of the graphics versus the substance of the game. The draw of that big story mode, was be able to have this character. I found that annoying personally. I was like, I don't really care. I just created myself as a soccer player and rose up through like different leagues, and it was breaking records. And I thought that was actually a lot more cool to be able to have that in all the different tournaments and be able to have those records and stuff like that, minus the talking to managers or getting evaluated, which I don't really have time for. But anyway. All right, so biggest game that you're excited about after E3. Brendan, to start with you.
Oh, there's a couple good ones. I'm going to have to go just because it probably has me finally buying an Xbox One. Sea of Thieves.
The which one?
Sea of Thieves. It's kind of like it's a cooperative pirate game.
Right.
And it's the more cartoony one, other than Skull and Bones, which also looks really good. But that one's more about naval warfare. This is Sea of Thieves is more about finding loot and doing treasure chests and treasure hunts, and it looks just, because I've talked about this a lot. I don't have a lot of time to play games anymore, and especially working 60 hours a week and holding down 2 podcasts. So I like games I can play in brief bits, and this looks like a game where I could jump on for a half hour or an hour and have a lot of fun, and then put it down and come back to it in a couple of days, and it's no big deal. And it just looks quirky enough and interesting enough to hold my attention, and plus, I'm a sucker for all things Age of Sail and nautical, and I love pirates. I love the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, even the sucky ones. So, but I just think, I think that one I think is the one that's got me the most excited. 2 honorable mentions would be Vampire and Anthem from BioWare. I think those are my 3 favorites.
Yeah, the Anthem. I'm glad you mentioned that one. That really does look amazing.
Yeah, it's supposed to be a really huge open world, and it might actually out Destiny, even though it's a third-person game rather than a first-person game. And it gives you the options using the exosuits to fill all the same roles in Destiny without having to have multiple characters. So if I feel like playing a Ranger one day, I can put on my Ranger suit. If I feel like playing a big heavy, I can put on the big, I forget what they called it, but the Colossus suit or whatever it was called. So I just like the versatility of that and the flexibility to let you play whatever you're in the mood for without having to change characters and level up completely different characters.
Right. Alex Thomas, what about you? What were the biggest games that were take away from E3? What are you most excited about?
Well, probably when I look at what is something that like I really can't wait to just play and get my hands on. I think I have to say Insomniac's Spider-Man. I think it looks so good. It's kind of right up my alley where it has that kind of Arkham style fight sequences,
right.
but it's got more of like an Uncharted cutscene kind of vibe to it. It looks beautiful. I trust Insomniac. They're a great developer, so I have a lot of trust in them. I just think that Sony did it perfect with showcasing that game, because I think that was all that they needed to sell everybody on it, is just to showcase a little bit of gameplay and kind of put it out there. So now that I've kind of seen it, I'm even more excited than I was when it was initially announced. So definitely that. I'm all about God of War. I think that God of War has taken a new turn. It got kind of bland with Ascension, which I didn't even play because I lost a lot of interest in it. I'm glad they're taking a sharp turn and creating this new kind of world with Kratos, and it just looks beautiful as well. I think it's going to be a solid game. I think all of PlayStation or Sony's press conference was not a lot of huge surprises, but a lot of just really solid releases. So yeah, those are my two that I'm just very excited about. I think that they're going to be just quality, and they're showing just enough. So
it's been too long since we've had a good God of War, and I mean I know that it got announced last year that they were developing one, but yeah, I mean after seeing the footage and stuff, God of War was amazing at the time on PlayStation 3. But you're right. I mean, it does get stale. It's like the Assassin's Creed games. I think we all can pretty much admit that the first Assassin's Creed was great, was brand new. We hadn't really seen a great stealth game like that since Hitman, but they definitely improved upon it, and Assassin's Creed 2 was the best, and still is the best. With all the...
I'm still curious how they're going to explain the change in mythologies, because now they're doing Norse mythology instead of Greek mythology. So, and those are separated by, like, I don't know, a couple thousand years. So, exactly how are they going to explain that time jump, or is this just a complete reboot altogether? So, which probably would be the way to go, but unless, Kratos is time traveling or something. I don't know, maybe he got picked up by the doctor, who knows. I'm good with it either way. I haven't played God of War in a while, and I feel like I need to, compared to everything that comes out. And that's the thing with like video games. We have these two big parts of the year. Spring towards the summer where we have a lot of releases. Then we have this lull in the summer to play catch up, and then the fall, right up until the end of the year. And things get stale very quickly. How Alex Moore and I talk about it all the time about replay value. Will you go back to this game? Will you complete it and want to play it again, or do you play just enough of it that, okay, it's great, I've done a review, but I'm never going to go back to it. It's not worth me finishing, that kind of thing. And God of War is one of those for me that I get just enough of a story and enough slashing and killing and blood and guts and all of that it keeps me coming back. But it's been too long. So I'm very stoked about that. And I'll say this about the Spider-Man game. Superhero games are hit and miss. The Batman games, first one was great, second one, third one, better. But you got to have a lot. I mean, unless you're playing Injustice where you're basically just dueling, you've got to have a good little story mode and on top of your graphics and all that. But we still don't really have an official date on this game yet, do we? I mean, they're still marking it as like the end of the year, but they haven't really said anything beyond that, right?
Yeah, I think I'm not even sure if they have released an actual date, so.
It sounds like to me they're probably going to pull what they did with For Honor, where it'll be like the end of the year for so long, and then they'll finally just announce that it'll come in like the spring of next year.
Yeah.
First quarter 2018, which really means April, May, June, because they talk in fiscal years, not in calendar years. So.
Yeah. Which is, that's perfectly fine. I mean, that's, That's the problem with the fall. I mean, think about the games that we've got coming out. We've got Destiny 2, we got Shadows of War, Battlefront, Call of Duty World War II, new, God of War. I mean, there's a lot of games. They've got that Day One, which is a zombie game. I mean, there's just a lot that's actually, really coming out that we're going to be flooded with. And that's not even the latest versions of sports games. So it's going to be very crowded with stuff that we're playing. I just hope that they don't, throw games on top of each other. Like last year, they had Dishonored 2 and Final Fantasy 15 within a week of each other. Like, how the hell am I supposed to get that done?
Yeah.
I work, damn it.
Yeah.
Alex Moore, what are you mostly looking forward to out of everything from E3 this year?
Well, right away, and this is something that I had a feeling was going to come up because I had read about it over the last couple of years, really, and it's the latest entry from Quantic Dream. And as somebody who really enjoys playing these, games that play like movies, Heavy Rain being one that I was a big fan of, and of course Beyond Two Souls, which is also fantastic in my view. Now you have Detroit. Become Human, if I'm getting that right. Become Human. And this one actually kind of resembles something of like sort of a Blade Runner type of story in terms of, somebody's being sent out to kind of shut down these androids, if you will, that are basically out and about serving human beings that are sort of developing human-type nature. And so the timing of it seems to be right in terms of, we've come back to Blade Runner 35 years later with the sequel coming out and everything else. But this is a project that the developers and the CEO have been working on for at least 5 years. And it's a story that was there in 2012, but then didn't really start to get any headway until after Beyond Two Souls was released, which I think was around 2013. And just like what they've done with the previous games, especially like with Heavy Rain, where they did a lot of scouting and locations in Philadelphia to really capture the essence of that location, they've done the same thing with going to Detroit, and it really, feels more like a movie when you hear about the process of how they're making this game, which is the way the previous games have come out for Quantic Dream. So I think it's going to be more of the same in terms of if you like this style of gameplay, which is a game that plays like a movie, then I think it's right up your alley. So that's obviously a winner for me and something I'll look forward to for next year for sure. But
it reminds me a lot of it reminds me a lot of Almost Human, the Carl Urban show that unfortunately got canceled by Fox. That was really
another
good,
great Fox show that got canceled way too early.
Which I believe was also set in Detroit. So
yeah,
it makes me wonder about what some of the inspiration may have been.
Possibly.
One thing I really enjoy about Sony since I've been playing the PlayStation 4, though, is that they've continued to go back to their roots and having remakes and so forth from the older games and sort of allowing people who maybe didn't get to experience them from previous generations to experience them. But one that I saw that kind of got my attention was that they're actually bringing back Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. And as somebody who enjoyed the arcades a number of years ago and haven't really played any of that in quite a while, I think it's kind of an interesting idea because, obviously whether it's been good or bad, it's been a big year, for Marvel and for the comic stuff, so that's not going away anytime soon. So it seems like it's kind of the right time to bring something like that back as well. But one thing that I was kind of shocked about, and not quite as shocking as it was a couple years ago when I heard about Shenmue 3, but when I heard about Beyond Good and Evil 2. And this was a game that I enjoyed way back in around 2003 or 2004. I'm not saying it's the greatest game I've ever played, but it was an interesting concept, and I found it interesting when I looked at the artwork for the game. It actually reminded me a lot of The Godfather. I don't know what the connection was there, if they're just trying to be funny, like tongue-in-cheek, which is kind of how the game is. But this was something that nobody really knew if this game was ever really going to get made, so to see development on that was kind of interesting as well.
Yeah. Well, I agree with you about Detroit becoming human. I think that there's about 2 or 3 great, like, just kind of role-playing games that like you said, play out very much kind of like a movie, or that they just have that great cinematic feel that you're playing along with. And I think that's probably going to be a major one for next year, even, a contender for, like, Game of the Year. It just absolutely looks amazing. But I'm also glad that's kind of not getting released this year because of everything that is. I think, as much fun as we've had with Horizon Zero Dawn this year, I think we're going to be just as involved with Shadows of War come this fall. So it's like, you can't have too much, going on top of, first-person shooters and stuff like that. And that's kind of what annoys me. I mean, I think it's great, but it also annoys me. It's like, look, I'm going to be playing Destiny 2, Call of Duty World War II, and Battlefront this fall. Not going to have much of a life. So a couple of things that I wanted to now getting to Xbox news for those that have an Xbox out there. I have both because I split my games between both. But they did talk about the Xbox One, and one of the things that was announced that they bring major enhancements to about 35 games and stuff. But is it worth $500? Because they're retailing it for $499. And is it worth, which is getting released on November 7th, but is it really worth that price just to enhance a handful of games?
I think the answer is very simple, and it depends on one thing and one thing alone. Are you going to play VR? If the answer is yes, then it's worth buying it. If you're not, then it's not. And I think it's that cut and dry.
Alex Thomas.
That or if you have a 4K. I'm sorry. There's one other caveat to that. If you have a 4K TV, because it will actually be able to utilize 4K, true high, ultra high def, whatever the fuck they're calling it these days. It'll be able to actually make use of that. But other than that, I don't see any reason to spend an extra $250 when you could just get an Xbox One.
Right. And that's the thing. So I'll ask this question with everything. Before I ask the question, Alex Thomas, what do you think? I know you are a PlayStation guy like the rest of us, but did you think it's that cut and dry?
I would say that, I don't own an Xbox One, but that's because I don't think that Microsoft has really delivered in terms of games, because that's why I, love video games, is for the content that, especially Sony, what they come out with, they're very good on their exclusives. And
right.
And at least it's convincing for me to say, I should buy Xbox One X for $500. I'm not even convinced to buy a regular Xbox One, and so my thing is not there for that at all. and they really pushed it at their conference is to, this is all the games we're coming out with. But even that, I think it lacked a lot of substance. It was a lot of indie titles, things like that, which I love indie games, but there was no Last of Us, in my opinion, that really was like, this is going to change the game, So at the end of it, I was just kind of like, there's going to be people that are into that, but for me, myself, I'm probably not going to purchase one.
Well, I admit the only reason I have the Xbox One is, I did a lot of trade-in credit with games that we've, had acquired and all that over the last couple of years, and especially when I upgraded to a PS4. So I didn't really spend $300 on it that wasn't out of credit. And I really bought it to be able to play Halo 5. I didn't buy it when it first came out just to play Halo 5. I waited, and then I got Halo 5 better. And Halo 5 was fun, but it's not like the greatest game in the world.
Yeah, exactly.
It wasn't worth. That's the whole reason I'm not running out buying a Switch just to play Zelda. I love The Legend of Zelda, and I do want to play that, and I've heard great things about it. but you're asking me to spend nearly $400 just for the game and the system for that nostalgia.
Yeah.
Okay? And if I really want that nostalgia, I have the gold cartridge. I'll just put it in the original Nintendo and the extra TV in my office. So, now, I mean, Alex Moore, you're pretty much just a PlayStation guy too. So, I mean, do you agree with Brendan that it's pretty much just about the VR?
I'm not even just a pretty much PlayStation guy. I'm all in with PlayStation at this point. And when I look at what Microsoft has done with the what they originally titled the Scorpio project, which by the way I found interesting with the title. I wonder where that came from, of course, but that was about the extent of the interest I had when I heard about that. And the first thing I thought of was, this is getting confusing already, because when people went to E3 in 2016, at first they didn't know if it was a new system or not. This is the exact same mistake that Nintendo made with the Wii U. And how could Microsoft fall into that same trap and make the same mistake? And, looking at history of gaming, the first thing I think of, and I kind of did an analysis of this, Nintendo and Microsoft are currently in similar situations that Sega was in at different times in its life. And when I look at Microsoft, this is a similar situation to where Sega was during the 16-bit era, which is you have a great system. It's not in first place, but it's in second place. You're having great success. You're competitive, even if you're not in first, but you are competitive. And what do? You start trying to one-up the competition by coming out with all these upgrades and peripherals. They look really cool, but most people aren't going to buy them because it's too much extra money, and you don't know what. And here's the thing: I think the market's actually smarter than it was, back in 92 or 93. They've already seen what happened before. Where do I really want to spend all this extra money for something that may or may not be good, that may only be good for a few games, or the technology may only be exciting for a couple of years? What's going to happen down the road? I think Microsoft has made a huge mistake. I think that this is them trying too hard.
Let me kind of go, and I'm not a Microsoft apologist by any means, but I think your correlation to the Wii U is slightly off, because the problem with the Wii U was that it was a completely new system, but it wasn't marketed as such. Okay, so when people walked in there, they thought they were just buying that pad to go with the Wii, and then they got told it was a $300 sticker, and they got sticker shock and walked out. They didn't realize it was a new system. This isn't a new system, and it's something, when you're saying they're making the same mistake Microsoft did, well, then Sony's made the exact same mistake too, because last year Sony came out with the PS4 Pro, which is essentially the Xbox One X. So I don't think the correlation stacks up, and I really don't think it's about a new system, nor is it about trying to garner a larger audience. The Xbox One X, much like the PS4 Pro, is specifically catered to a core group of power gamers who are going to who want the latest power, who want to be able to use the most high definition stuff, and who want to play VR. And I think that's why you don't have a brand new system. You only have a souped up version of the original. I was talking about this with Marcus earlier in the show. It's not a new system. We're still in the same system generation. All it is the system generation came out at a weird spot a couple of years before VR really got going and hit the market. And this is both Microsoft and Sony's response to VR now becoming mainstream. They bumped up their system's power a little bit. And, I don't think Xbox One ever expects Xbox One X to sell 100 million units. Hell, they probably don't even expect it to sell 50. If it sold 20, they'd probably be happy, as long as Xbox One sells 80. So, I think that's the difference between these two systems, the PS4 Pro and the Xbox One X, and the Wii U. The Wii U actually was a new system for a new generation. It just wasn't marketed properly.
Well, let me ask this. Speaking of VR, because we are going that way and a lot more games are being pushed. I mean, we've got, they have Rise of the Tomb Raider. They've released Legacy Editions, and that's being marketed as a VR game too for the PlayStation. is there enough now to sustain this? I mean, or better yet, is this fad worth getting excited for? Or like Brendan said, is it really just that core group of power gamers, but not for the average gamers? And I don't even think any of us, because we have jobs and families and all that, I mean, we're not like power gamers ourselves. We don't have, that's not all that we do. But again, is that really what VR is just all about, just for that core group, or something that is more for, you know, the wider audience? Alex Moore, I'll start with you.
I think maybe it's still a little bit too early to really say. Something I found interesting was I was looking back at the history of E3, and when you go back to the very first year of E3 in 1995, Nintendo was marketing the Virtual Boy, which was a bust, and was really the only system they made in that period of time that wasn't a great hit as a console system. And, you know, again, it comes down to the price tag, and it comes down to, you know, is it worth it and everything else. And I think with each generation, you have to understand, you know, how far along is the upgrade, how far along is the technology. It seems like VR has made rapid production, and maybe it's not too soon to go ahead and play to that crowd. But in terms of going back to what I was saying, you know, and here's another comparison I've made back to what the mistake Sega made back, you know, in the days of Genesis. They went to the CD technology, and it just wasn't ready, you know, to reach the audiences, the masses. I don't necessarily think that's the case this time. I think that VR has come far enough where it's not going to be buggy, it's not going to be crap, and hopefully each of us have gotten to experience VR in some phase, and it is pretty interesting and pretty entertaining. But, you know, again, it may take a couple of years before anybody really knows exactly how much it's going to catch on, if that is going to be the thing, because we saw how successful the Wii was with, you know, the nunchuck system and the controllers, and everybody thought this is the motion sensor controllers the way it's going to go, and it kind of went that way, but it didn't really catch on the way that maybe some people thought it would. It was good for one system with the Wii, and then it just sort of evaporated. Right.
Alex Thomas, is there like anything about VR that you are excited about? I mean, that's worth all of this, or not?
One of my best friends, he has a PlayStation VR, so I've actually played a lot of the games that are on it. And at first, when he first got it, it was like we were so excited. We got it the opening night. So I played Rigs, and I played VR Worlds, and I played Arkham VR, and all those kind of games. And I think it's crazy. It's kind of one of those things you have to experience whenever you have it on your head and you're kind of in that world. And I think that the problem with VR is that that's really hard to make marketable, especially at the price point that it's at. So I think that Sony is trying. I think it is worth it in some instances. I mean, I think a big issue, which I think people don't even notice, is a lot of these games make me really sick. And like I saw that they're doing Doom VR, which I think that would work because you're jumping to locations. But then they showed Fallout, where I think you're actually walking around, and it's the walking around that actually makes me really sick. If I'm stationary, it doesn't bother me. So I think there's some different factors that I don't think we've ever really faced with certain video games, you know.
Right.
But I think it's worth it. I think it's again a thing like the PS4 Pro. My friend that had it, he has the PS4 Pro. He bought it on the first day. He's just one of those people that's very loyal to buying everything and experiencing everything. So there's definitely an audience for it. I just don't think they need to put all their chips in for it. So, they just need to be aware of what they're selling, basically.
Well, I know that we're going to VR. Yeah. That's fine. For me personally, and I've talked about this with Brendan. We've had this discussion, but we also like to make jokes, which I'll get to in a moment. I would love to play Star Trek Bridge Crew. It looks amazing. Okay? Mm-hmm. As a Star Trek fan, yes, put me into that. And you had a great marketing tool by actually having Star Trek alum, from Jerry Ryan to, just different people from the, cast on different shows being able to try it and be there. That's fine, okay? But what you're asking me to do, to pay to play with my buddies, okay? Like if it's a grand just to have basically put two things together with the game, and then if we decide to do that as an outlet to all be Star Trek Bridge Crew, I'm putting $2,000 into it, okay?
Yeah.
And we're a media outlet. We don't have that big of a budget, but if you'd like to buy some advertising, we can play Star Trek Bridge Crew. We'll happily take that check. But that's the thing. It's not cost-effective for what that is. And then, of course, the other games that they're pushing, I love Doom, and I love the fact that they came out with Doom last year. Okay?
Yeah.
I have it on both my systems. I've played the story mode, but I also love the arcade mode. And it was worth the money for that nostalgia and stuff. But to put it into VR, I'm like, I don't know if I really want to go that route. I think my nostalgia only goes so far. I think the VR is really catering to a younger crowd of like really being able to experience it. Now, another thing that, and getting back to Star Trek Bridge Crew, by the time you're asking me to put all the money into it, I'm just like, I'll wait for the holodeck to finally be invented, where we really truly have VR.
And that's what I say every time somebody talks to me about VR or 3D movies. Call me when they invent the Star Trek holodeck. Until then, I don't give a shit.
Right. Yeah,
I really don't. I mean, I've tried VR. I think the damn headsets are uncomfortable. I think the whole experience is disorienting. I want to sit on my couch and play a video game. I don't want to, be stressed out more by the game. I get enough stress in my life. I don't need to be. Not for me.
Well, the one thing that Brendan and I kind of agree on, about as VR as we want to get, is when we're screaming at each other and talking shit while we're playing hockey online.
Pretty much. Yeah. And
so
we
anyway,
talk a lot of shit to each other.
Anyway, we do. We have to eventually record this because we did our first little series. We need to do another one, which we'll probably do when NHL 18 comes out. But there was this one game that I was very interested in, and I was actually going to spend, at a retail price at Farpoint, but it's only strictly for VR. And I'm like, I think that's disappointing because that actually looks like an amazing open world, something that can kind of compete with, Mass Effect, and I just like, no, it's strictly VR. I'm like, well, okay, fine then. I'm done at that point. If you really want me to do VR and be at the arcade, well, free play on Beltline here in Richardson is like a mile and a half from my house. I'll just pay my $10, go play it, and drink some good beer because they do have craft beer there. I don't know. It just develop more good games for, like Brendan is saying, if you're going to be able to, and that's what most of us do anyways. We want to sit on our couch. We want to get engrossed in a story. Okay, and take our time. Two things I wanted to ask as we, start getting here towards the end. There's been a lot of news, of course, about stuff with the Nintendo Switch, and, they announced Mario Odyssey, which I think is great to play upon that nostalgia with Nintendo. But again, you want me to spend $300 on the Nintendo Switch, you got to have a lot more games. And that's personally where I'm at.
Not to mention a decent amount of memory. I mean, it comes with 32 gigs of RAM. My phone has that. And this is an in-home console. I mean, come on, and you gotta have a little bit more than that. I mean, some of the games they're talking about coming out are going to be basically you load the game on and that's the game. So, I mean, I don't know. We'll see. I've got to learn more about it. I've got to get into it more. I haven't done enough, but my wife keeps telling me that it's better than it sounds. So, and she knows Nintendo better than I do. So I'll have to take her word for it until I can really read about it.
Well, and I do apologize for our audience. We haven't invested enough time in our gaming coverage to the Nintendo Switch. And a lot of that is, what our complaints are as gamers. We know that most of you out there are about our age group. You're in your 30s and your 40s, and you grew up in the heyday and all that. So you're like us. You want a good console and all that, but you want a lot of stuff that you can fit. The biggest, I think the greatest thing that happened to gaming this year was PlayStation finally having the update to where we could have, an external hard drive, which the day they dropped it is the day I went and got it and started filling up games again that I could go back and play. But, all right, so a couple of interesting things about games that are coming out. First, all right, sorry, there's a little technical difficulty. I think one of you is moving around or something.
Yeah, somebody got an open mic where they're crumbling paper.
Yeah. Is that you, Alex Thomas?
Nope, I'm just sitting.
Alex, Moore, are you outside or something?
No, sir.
Okay, then Skynet is
that's weird.
Screwing with us again.
Okay. Well, we apologize to everybody for that. All right. So the new game that's supposed to be coming out this year, Days Gone, which is basically an open world biker dude, fighting zombies and stuff like that. I found this very interesting. That is as amazing as it looks, and I know a lot of people that are excited for this game. That there's also been a lot of complaining that it's very much like Horizon Zero Dawn, except you're a biker dude killing zombies instead of, mechanical dinosaurs. And we haven't had it. Now, I'm not saying that we've had a chance to play this, but if this is true, shame on you. Because you have a great concept here that goes beyond just playing, killing zombies in Call of Duty. But if you're basically just having the same kind of concept and mythology as a great game that was already released, that game's now worth $60. So,
well,
I heard some.
I'll have to get more into it. But when I was watching it, I got more like Last of Us than I did Horizon. But I don't know. We'll see. Yeah.
Now here's a question I wanted to ask about storytelling and what drives us to video games. Is there a point? The question is there a point, or can we go too far in the story that takes away from the fun of playing it? And the specific of this is the new Far Cry 5 that is coming out in the spring of next year. Because the whole concept is really about a kind of a patriot family holed up, in the woods, and then dealing with, kind of radical conservative ideas, going far beyond, what Far Cry has done. Do you feel like that? And I would like everybody's opinion on this. Do you think if a game gets too political in its ideas, it takes away from the fun of playing the game? And I'll start with you, Brendan.
It depends on how it's presented, I think, because look, if you're talking about they're doing some Michigan militia type Ruby Ridge crazies, then all right, I don't as a libertarian who leans conservative, I don't really get offended by you plugging those people in a video game because they're batshit crazy anyway. But I don't know. I mean, maybe if the game starts attacking more mainstream beliefs on either side, then it's becoming more of a propaganda tool. But if you're attacking the far wing fringe crazies, I don't really think it's that big of an idea because those people are kind of a sad caricature of themselves anyway.
Yeah, that's true. Alex Thomas, what about you?
Yeah, I think that if you're a developer, you want to create something that it has a part of you in it. I think that the problem where it becomes an issue is if it kind of takes you out of the game. So if I'm playing a game and I kind of realize it and I think about it, I'm like, okay, that's kind of in my face. Then I think they kind of messed up on what they're trying to do. I want to be able to be in that place and it makes sense in that place, and then just try to do it. With Far Cry, I think like it was said that it's more like a caricature on a kind of crazy level. So I don't think it doesn't bother me at all. And I think that I think it could go a different way. That's more outrageous, but from what I saw of the gameplay and of that trailer, which I thought the trailer was great, the first trailer they showed, I think it looks solid, and I've heard discussion about it, but no negative thoughts there about it.
Alex Moore, you?
Well, I tend to be a fan of, allegory and symbolism where you see something in a game and it sort of reminds you of something from real life. And again, I think kind of like what Brendan was saying, it kind of depends on how it's presented. When you look at a game like, Fallout 3, and you approach a town where you have people worshiping a bomb that's basically alive that hasn't exploded, and people are sort of, drinking the water around it that's, full of all kinds of toxins, but, but treating it like it's some kind of, a vigil or some kind of a deity.
Yeah.
It's like, well,
yeah,
this is just sort of a...
Just like the plot point from Planet of the Apes 2.
Right. So there's sort of a tongue-in-cheek approach where this is something that we can relate to, but it's not. It's done in a way that I don't really find offensive. I mean, I won't say that nobody would find it offensive because there's always people out there like that who, just don't have a sense of humor anymore, I guess. But to just put it mildly, I guess. But when I saw the trailer. When I saw the trailer, I thought, well, this is interesting, and depending on who you are, you interpret it a certain way. And friends of mine who are kind of, I don't want to say anti-Christian, but are sort of anti-religion, were quick to point out, hey, they're picking on Christianity. But me, as a Christian myself, I looked at it and thought, no, I think it's sort of picking on something like Scientology or something a little more out there that more people think is kind of crazy. So I think it even kind of comes down to your own personal interpretation at the end of the day.
Well, I think my biggest thing with this game is, I like the Far Cry series for, what it is. I had a lot of fun doing the Primal game last year before I eventually traded it in. And then Horizon came out, which was like, I'm never going to go back to that Primal game because this is awesome. I get the caricature. I get kind of the allegory and about itself and not being able to take itself too seriously. But the one thing I will point out about this is I'm not from the South. I wasn't born in the South. Okay, I'm not a native Texan. I don't hate Texas. I live here. I'm not going anywhere. I'm from Chicago. I'm a Yankee. And that's how I will be considered. But anything that kind of just makes fun of like a group of people, not, that's for the sake of making fun of them, I think is ridiculous in video games. It's not the point, okay? And that's what I worry about with Far Cry 5 is while I may disagree with you, I also respect everybody's right to believe whatever crazy notions they want to believe. So, if you want to barricade yourself on your land and say, fuck the government and all of that, that's fine. But if you're developing a video game that's basically going to poke fun at that idea, or the Duck Dynasty type of people, which I hate Duck Dynasty, okay? But you have a right to do that, and I don't think anybody should make fun of you. You have a right to live. I may make fun of the Jersey guys, like I did earlier in the show, and I will always make fun of them. They drive me nuts. But you have a right to be that. And we shouldn't be using video games to influence people like politically or how you look at it. So that's the only thing I worry about with everything that's coming out with Far Cry 5. And I wanted to get everybody's opinion on that because I think that's part of what they're marketing it as, is that it is going to be one of the most controversial games of next year. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. All right. A lot coming out of E3. You heard what we're most excited for. Some are not even coming out this year, but there was a lot of great things coming, and our take when it comes to VR and the souped-up systems. We got about 5 minutes left, so I want to actually talk a little bit about the first half of 2017 and our favorite games so far, just real quick. And I'm actually going to go kind of backwards. We'll start with you, Alex Thomas. What's the best game that you've been playing so far in 2017?
Probably, I'd say the obvious, which is Horizon. I mean, it's hard to beat. The only thing I've heard from, other people is that Breath of the Wild is the only one that's standing up against it, but I have to go with Horizon. I mean, incredible story. Also, though, what I've been playing recently, and it's slowly creeping up on it, is Persona 5. Really love that game. It's got great reviews. I'm about 40 hours in right now, and it is just it's an incredible story, very clean gameplay. It's a great game. I highly recommend it. So that's probably my favorite so far is between Horizon and Persona 5, so I'd say.
Okay. How about you, Alex Moore?
Well, I think the best game so far would be Horizon, just in terms of the gameplay and how easy it is to learn, and just the look of it, the story, and everything else. But in terms of my favorite game, I guess that's a bit of a toss-up, because I've enjoyed Prey a lot as well. So it's kind of a push, I guess, in terms of what I've enjoyed the most. But in terms of the best game, I think it still has to be Horizon.
Yeah. Now, I know Brendan hasn't gotten a lot of these games as much, but is there something so far that's come out this year that you've really enjoyed, that you have gotten a chance to play, Brendan?
Well, I'd really love to say Final Fantasy 17, but Square Enix can. Well, I have issues with them because they basically tried to rip me off of my money on their website and then wouldn't give it back to me, and it took me 3 weeks to get my money back. So I'm gonna just take the easy road, because it's kind of probably also true, and say Horizon as well, and just kind of make it a consensus. But I would have liked to have said that I purchased Final Fantasy 17 because I'm such a Final Fantasy fan. But yes, Square Enix kind of jumped in the boat with Fredo when it comes to me. So.
Well, I think right now our leading contender for Game of the Year is obviously Horizon Zero Dawn. I've recommended it to everybody. I've given out copies to people. It's truly, truly an amazing game. Finally had a chance to go back to it after a couple of months this past weekend, and took me about 20 tries to get past a certain point, but I did. Excuse me. But I also agree with Alex, and him and I did the review on Prey, which is also another great game. And I think a lot of this Mass Effect has been good. It's a good game, but it is going to get overshadowed a little bit, and I think it'll be largely forgotten by the time we get to the end of the year. The same with For Honor. As much fun as it was, and I'm glad For Honor came out at the beginning of the year, because it would have just easily been lost in the shuffle. They got some improvements to make for the second version, but For Honor is fun in a lot of areas. I just don't know if it was completely worth $60 yet, but I think the second version is going to be absolutely amazing. But yeah, for the first half, it really is just coming down to like Horizon and Prey that are the two of the best games so far. But it's always fun to go back and do some different games throughout the year. And for your sports game, obviously everybody's probably playing MLB, doing their seasons before all the new sports games come out. And of course, Madden does come out August 23rd, which will be the first version with the Frostbite engine. And yes, Tom Brady graces the cover, and I think we all know by now, as we've learned in this past Super Bowl, that if you're playing the Patriots and you're down by 24, don't get too cocky yet.
Yeah, Arthur Blank.
Yeah. So that one goes out to Brendan, who I loved his photos and video, which were pretty much like mine the night the Cubs won the World Series. So anyway.
So my favorite image is of there's a picture of Arthur Blank on the sidelines, and you're seeing it from the back of the end zone after the Patriots have just scored the tying touchdown, and it looks like he's taking a shit right on the field. He's just it's like he's died and his body has just vacated his bowels.
Hey, if they get that image in the game, then it's definitely worth buying. So, all
Absolutely.
right, everybody, we got to wrap this up, but a lot you should look forward to in E3. I want to thank the two Alexes for joining us in the second half of the show. Next week, we'll be back talking about being nerdy for sports movies, which we've never talked about on this week on that Nerd Show. Everybody, have a good night. Say goodbye.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Wow, they did that in stereo.